Okay, let's start. First of all, quickly, can you hear me? Just testing. Somebody respond?
Yes, teacher.
Good, good. Okay. If you remember last week, we start talking about why, as a person, should you start a business or a startup in Vietnam. Yeah. So we talked about the various different characters needed, and such as confidence, perseverance, determination, energy, and diligence, resourcefulness, as well as ability to take on calculate risks, and so on. Separate to that, we talked about the big three factors. You or the founding team, Hacker, Hustler, Hipsters. If you have the right team, the business will take care of itself. Then secondly is the business plan or idea or opportunity. And then thirdly is about resource, whether it's a raw material or capital, or whatever is needed to start your business. We also talk about the various different advantages if you're the eldest or the only child. These are advantageous because you are independent and other people are dependent on you. Typically, most entrepreneurs or startups start by people who are of relatively quite young age. So you're within that age group, yeah? So 18 to 34. And typically, entrepreneurships tends to be from both poor and rich country as well. Mostly from poor because there's a lot of opportunity, more so compared to rich country. And it's a lot more expensive in rich country, whereas it is a lot cheaper in less developed countries such as Vietnam, for example. Then we talked about the dark side of being an entrepreneur. It can affect you in a lot of different ways, such as financial risks, your career risks. You could spend time advancing or climbing the corporate ladder instead of starting your startup. Or it could be family or your social risks. Pretty much you have less time with your friends and your family, so hence it's going to affect your relationship with your families and your friend and your other social network. And lastly, psychological risks or psychic risks. Basically, long hours and various different risks can stress your mental health, so hence it can affect your mental health in a psychological way. The kind of risks which you are affected, the kind of distress and so on, or stress, in general, once you become an entrepreneur or even an intrapreneur, there's going to be discrepancy between your expectation as well as the ability you need to or meet your demand or other people's demand itself. So in general, entrepreneurs, especially good entrepreneurs, they tend to look for challenge and so on, and nothing will meet their demand and so on. That's why they strive to improve and do a lot more. So in general, there will be discrepancy from their expectation as well as what they receive in the real world. So in general, there will always be a discrepancy there. There will also be discrepancy between the expectation and the personality as well. Not everyone are born with all the necessary characters which makes you a good entrepreneur. If you are very, very lucky. But most of us in general do not have all the necessary characters to be good entrepreneurs. So there will be discrepancy between your characters and the so-called perfect characters to be an entrepreneur. So trying to be good entrepreneurs, try to be not yourself, yeah, because entrepreneurs might have different characters to your real self itself, can be stressful indeed. Entrepreneur's role and as well as operating environment can lead to stressful to do with it's long hours, so you're going to spend less time with your friends and your family. You're going to have a lot of stress because you're managing capital and so on. You might be short of capital, or you talk to clients, or you might not be profitable. You could be stressed for various different reasons. And in general, starting a startup or being an entrepreneur can be stressed from these profits and capital and so on as well. And as well as other stress will come from initiating and managing a business by taking on various different risks, such as financial, career, family, social, and psychological risks. And then you have to interact with external contingency, such as your customers, your suppliers, as well as your regulators and authorities, as well as lawyers and accountants and so on. So in general, all these different stress will add up. Yeah? All these stress are here, not just one or two, but everything will impact and it will all add up to a stressful environment. So the source of stress, we kind of looked at stress, that there will be stress, but the source of stress is going to be things like loneliness, immersion in business, people problems, as well as your need to achieve, because you're going to have a difference between your discrepancy between your characters or what you want to achieve and reality itself. So these are the four main causes of entrepreneurial stress. You're going to be lonely because it's lonely at the top. You'll be dealing with many people, but you will be isolated from any one person, especially people which have similar situation as you. Entrepreneurs are rare, yeah. So in general, maybe 5% of the population will be entrepreneurs. So seeking to talk to people who are similar situation as you can be difficult. So hence it can be isolating. You might work in a company, but then with many people around you, but they are your employees or they are your customers, or they are the authority. Yeah. In general, these people do not have or know what it is like to be an entrepreneur. So hence it can be very lonely because difficult to find people with similar interests or similar kind of situation as you. In addition, there will be long hours. And hence, you're going to spend less time with your friends as well as your family. So long hours at work prevent entrepreneurs from seeking comfort and counsel of their friends and their family, as well as not participating in the normal social activities, because a lot of time you spend at the office trying to make your startup to be successful. Second main cause of stress is the immersion in the business. It will be your main kind of work, and all your interest, work, time, and everything will go into your startup. So hence, successful entrepreneur will have, may have plenty of money, but in general, they do not have time to spend that money for whether it's leisure activities or whatever else you spend money to do. In general, the business will be your startup will be everything and pretty much your life. And a lot of successful entrepreneurs are successful because they treat their business that way. And hence, by treating their business that way, they might have plenty of money, but they will not find time to utilize those money. Oops. The third source of stress is people problem. In general, entrepreneur wants to start a business or even want to be an entrepreneur so they can be independent. They do not have bosses to answer to, but in general, it's illusionary in the sense that you cannot be independent as an entrepreneur. So even though you try to be independent by becoming an entrepreneur, in general, you're going to find out being an entrepreneur, you will depend on other people. So entrepreneur depends on work with not only your business partner, but your employees, your customers, your bankers, other professionals. And a lot of times it can be frustrating as well, especially complaints from customers or capital issues or human resource issues, or even your business partner pulling or even quitting on you. So in general, entrepreneurs who wants to be independent and so on, they're going to find out that it's going to be very difficult to be independent as an entrepreneur, especially when you have to deal with so many different people, especially customers and employees in general. So there'll be a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment, and a lot of aggravation, especially with these main two groups. Customers in general, especially if they're disappointed on your deliveries, and your employees, especially in Vietnam. Employees usually is an issue because there's in very fast growing economy and so on. Finding good employees are difficult because most companies will grab up any good employees already. The third cause of major stress when it comes to entrepreneur is a need to achieve. In general, entrepreneurs has a strong need to achieve, and hence being or having a need to achieve can be a good thing to be an entrepreneur. It encourages you to go out and do something about it. So, but if you have a strong need to achieve, no achievement will be good enough. That's part of what the definition of need to achieve is. Even if you achieve what you try to achieve for, you're going to find some other achievements which you are lacking of and so on. You're going to be disappointed. And that's what need to achieve is all about. So hence, entrepreneurs are trying to accomplish too much, as well as many are never ever going to be satisfied with their work, no matter how much achievement or how well this work has been done. I mean, you got a good example of some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, whether you want to name Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg and so on. They still going out there and they still try to achieve, even though they might be some of the richest people on the planet. It does not mean that they are satisfied. Yeah, so in general, there will be a discrepancy between your need to achieve as well as reality, because it's never ever is going to be enough, and that's what the point of a character such as need to achieve is all about. You're never going to reach what you want. So all these stress and long hours, a stressful environment, you need to achieve, allow this discrepancy and so on. It can be a bad thing when it comes to entrepreneur, but in general, there are ways to deal with these stress. Yeah, so the dark side being an entrepreneur, but there are ways to deal with the dark side. So in general, most entrepreneurs don't know how to deal with their stress and so on. So hence, some of them do break down or have psychological problems and so on. But at least in this course, we'll try to deal with these particular stress if you want, or if you become an entrepreneur in your later life. One of the biggest way, one of the best way to deal with the stress of being an entrepreneur is networking. So it's to do with the problems of the first problem in here, kind of like loneliness, and in general, you're not going to find many people or many other entrepreneurs to talk to and to share distress or even share problems with in general. So networking by talking to other entrepreneurs, by going to these or making friends with other entrepreneurs. In general, you can relieve your loneliness by sharing your experience with other entrepreneurs or other business owners. In doing so, not only you de-stress yourself, but you can also gain experience or lessons from other business owners, as well as other business owners gain experience from your experience yourself. So it allows you to gain from hearing not only the errors, but the triumph of other business owners or other entrepreneurs as well. It allows you to de-stress. If anything, this can be a very powerful thing as well, because not only helps you de-stress and learn lessons from others by networking with other startups and so on, or other co-founders and so on. You can build up a customer network as well as potential cooperation with other businesses as well. So it can be multiple goodness come out of this so-called networking. In addition, other ways to get to de-stress yourself when you're an entrepreneur is to get away from it all. Sometimes you need to leave it all, go on holiday, take a short break, basically forget about work and so on for an extended period. In that way, you can come back with a fresh mind and de-stress kind of mentality as well. Another way to de-stress is communicate with not only your employees, but other potential people which you have in contact with, including your suppliers and authorities and so on. So in small business, a personal touch is very, very important, especially in startups where there's only tens or less than 100 employees. You can know everyone by not only by their first name basis, but not only that, you might even know their wives or their girlfriend or their husbands or their kids' names as well. So not only the personal touch will improve or help you motivate your employees, but in addition, it will help to de-stress yourself. It will give you that so-called human touch, which can help you de-stress yourself as well. So communicating with your employees has two potential effects. Number one, it motivates your employees. Number two, it helps you to de-stress and give you that so-called human touch. In general, a lot of these human touch and so on are not available in large corporations where there are thousands or hundreds of employees. But within the startup, at least you can know everyone by their first name. as well as their partner, as well as their kids as well. Employees can be a lot more productive as well as you being less stressed as well. Another way to de-stress is find satisfaction outside of the company itself by having a hobby of some sort, or some kind of reason for you to get away from the companies or the business or the startup occasionally, so that you can gain a new perspective when you return back to the business, or gain perspective from your hobbies, and you can apply it to your business as well. It allows you to de-stress and not have or constantly thinking about your startup 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By having hobbies and so on, you can relax your mind in a lot of ways. Another way to de-stress is to delegate. If things are too stressful, then you can always shift or remove some of the stress by pushing it onto other people, especially your employees. You're going to have business partners, you're going to have middle managers or team leaders and so on. By delegating, you can shift a lot of the stress or share a lot of the stress with your employees as well. So not only it will help you to gain time, it removes the stress out of you as well by shifting it on to someone else. But usually entrepreneurs are perfectionists, and in general, they tend to find it very difficult to delegate because they need to be involved in everything or every aspect of the operation. And hence, we talk about delegation and so on, but in general, in practice, most entrepreneurs will find it difficult to delegate to someone else. So in general, you have to learn and figure out how to do it properly and so on. So by not delegating, it can be very stressful, or even by delegating, especially if you don't know how to delegate, and can be stressful because you have to trust other people. So hence, appropriate delegatees must be found and trained. Not only that, you need to find people that you can trust as well. Because if you delegate to someone which you cannot trust, it can be more stressful itself on its own. So delegation, there are ways to do this. You do it properly, it will help to de-stress you. You do it incorrectly, if anything, it will add more stress, especially with trust and so on, when you do the delegation itself. Separately, in general, a lot of these stress will add up. A little bit of stress here and there, it will all add up. And in general, a lot of co-founders and entrepreneurs tend to suffer from mental health and too much stress, or even other diseases associated with stress. So, you know, the diabetes or other kind of stressful kind of even heart attack and so on. It can affect not only your mental health, but also your physical health as well. So check up not only on the mental health, but also on your physical health every so often. In that way, at least you can take medicines or remedies, or even figure out that you are too stressed and so on. You need to get away from it all and take holidays or find hobbies and so on. At least your doctors will tell you when to do that as well. And it's all about knowing yourself, as well as knowing your business, as well as your life partners and so on. Yeah, so you need to know yourself. You need to know that you are stressed or mentally affected and so on. Take appropriate measures such as networking, get away from it all, communicate with people, delegate, find a hobby, or take medicines and so on to de-stress yourself. So it's very important that you need to know how to treat yourself, especially under stressful conditions. So there are dark side when it comes to be an entrepreneurs and so on. But with the dark side, there are ways to overcome these stressful dark side of being an entrepreneur. But there are also a lot of positives which comes with being an entrepreneur as well. Otherwise, why would anyone become entrepreneurs, or why would anyone start a startup? The positive needs to outweigh the negative. If it's more negative than positive, then there will be no entrepreneur on this planet. So there have to be positive. There needs to be a trade-off. There needs to be more positive. That's why there are entrepreneurs on this planet. The positive is you want to own your own show or be independent. That's only an illusion. You have to deal with not only employees, but also suppliers and governments and customers and so on in general. So you're never going to be independent of yourself in general. But definitely one of the major positive when you own your own business is the financial securities as well as success. In general, entrepreneurs or startups will pay a lot more. In that way, at least there'll be people who wants to be an entrepreneur. If it does not pay more than having a salaries or low risk, safe kind of jobs, then nobody wants to be an entrepreneur, given all the bad things which associate with entrepreneurs as well. So in general, there needs to be some kind of payoff, and in general, the payoff is a higher financial security as well as higher financial success once you succeed. And in general, another positive, if you are that kind of person or have that kind of characters, in the sense that need to achieve or need to do things which is better, it will fit that particular criteria. You'll get job satisfaction, especially in Vietnam. Being an entrepreneur in society and so on, it is looked up to in general, because you are helping society by creating more jobs, by adding to the economy. Compare that to just being an employees. Being employees, you're not, or you're unlikely to be adding to the number of employees or employments, or even in terms of economy. So it can be satisfaction kind of jobs, but not only that, it can be a challenge or a big achievement as well if you have that kind of characters. And most successful entrepreneurs will have that kind of characters. They want to achieve, they want to do better in general. And it will certainly will help you to do that. Compare that to just a normal everyday kind of job, where you're going to find that it's not as challenging as starting a business itself. Not only that, it's being in control, doing something or have something to do as well. But whatever you want to do, you are doing it yourself. But it can be also an illusion here as well when it comes to when we talk about independent. Control, in general, it's not necessary what you will get out of being an entrepreneur. In general, you will be in control by your customers. You are providing a service or product for your customers. So it is your customers which control you. So it's part illusional here as well. So being independent is illusional because you have to deal with all these people. But not only that, being in control is also partially illusional as well, because it is your customers. It all depends on your customers, the people which will pay you at the end of the day to provide a service or product to them. Yeah, so it's at the end of the day, it is the customers which is in control. So there are definitely lots of negatives. We talk about the dark side of being an entrepreneur already. It is long hours and stressful long hours as well. It could be 12 hours plus, including the weekends, so Saturday and Sunday as well. So this is not long hour week or work days or weekdays. This is long hour every day, including holidays and including weekends. Uncertainty income, especially in your first year, and if you're not too successful, chance of success is relatively quite low. So uncertainty income in your first year or when you start up in the first place, and you will have loss of capital as well. But if you manage to pass all that, it will all be positive, but at least in the first attempt or the first few attempts and so on, there will be some uncertain income as well as loss of capital. Your friends and your family will come second. Your business will come first. Your business is like your baby, your extended family and so on as well. So, which it certainly is as well. Don't forget that it is your creation. And potentially it consists of friends and family who works for you as well. So in reality, the startups itself, it is a living organism or an individual or many individuals, such as your employees itself. So in general, your family, which is not part of the business, will become second, or your friends, which is not part of the business, will become second. Your business is your friend and your family as well, in general, most of the time. As well as the quality of your life will suffer, especially with these long hours and less contact with friends and family. But your companies itself or your startup can also be your friends and your family as well. Especially if you're not too successful, then there are no benefit with all these quality of life and so on, which you suffer at no benefit. But if your business becomes successful, then this will disappear, and also the income uncertainty will also disappear as well. So in general, there are pros and cons when it comes to starting a business. And in general, there are more positive than negative overall. Otherwise, you'll never find an entrepreneurs. But entrepreneurs do exist. It do exist for a reason. It exists because of all these positive tends to outweigh a lot of these negatives. But not everyone in the world will become entrepreneurs in general. There's a small percentage of us which will become entrepreneurs. In general, and hence there are pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, but there are disadvantages and advantages in everything which we do anyway. Being an employee, being on a salary, there are advantages, but then there are also disadvantages as well. Pros and cons. Okay, let's move on. Next section is not only you understand yourself and what it takes of you to become an entrepreneur or start a startup. You need to be able to also develop your innovation skill sets or your creativity skill sets as well, which will help, especially when it comes to starting a business. So most of you are probably in that situation at the moment where you're trying to figure out what kind of business do you want to start, especially with the e-business assignment itself. So those of us, or those which are born with some innovative skill set, or born with some creativity skill sets, they will not find much of a problems when it comes to coming up with ideas or coming up with new ideas, to be exact. But majority of us aren't like that. Majority of us do not have the necessary skill sets to be innovative or even have a necessary skill set to be creative as such. So a lot of us needs to work at it as well. Things like opportunity identification, search for new ideas, in general to ideas for a business as such. So opportunity identification is central to what startups or entrepreneurship is all about. It's a creative pursuit of ideas. I mean, remember, this is only part of it. Yeah, the biggest part is finding your team. Yeah, that is the most important. This is only secondary. It's finding the business plan or the business opportunity or the business ideas. This is secondary. So once you figure out your team, or if you are a solo player, that's totally fine as well. But once you sort that out, the next step is to come up with a business plan or an idea of what kind of business, what kind of product, or what kind of service which you provide to your customers. So hence, you need to be able to identify these things, yeah? To identify opportunity, to go through these creative pursuits, to figure out what you need to do with your business, as well as push it through some kind of innovative process and make your business successful. So the first step for any entrepreneurs is identification of a good idea, whatever that is, whatever that concept is. What is a good idea? In general, wherever there's a good idea, there is usually a problem. And the problem is usually someone else's problem. It's usually someone else's problem. But what is a good idea? What is a startup? What is a business? A business or a startup, especially successful startups, is something you're doing, whether it's a product or a service, that someone else is willing to pay you to do for them. And usually most people tend to pay other people to solve their problem. Actually, the arrow should be the other way around. The problem, wherever you see a problem, there are people who's willing to pay you to solve their problem for them. Yeah, so wherever you find a problem, there's always a solution, which is the so-called good idea. Not only that, there are people who's willing to pay you to solve that problem for them. So a search for a good idea is never is easy. But what is easy is a search for problems. Once you find the problems, then at least that's a starting point for you to figure out what is a good solution or good idea to solve that problem for someone else, so that they can pay you for doing so. So the search for good ideas are very easy, but a search for problems is very easy. In general, there are problems everywhere. If you look for problems, you'll find problems. But once you get and find the problems, then you need to figure out how to solve that problems. Yeah, because definitely there will be people willing to pay you to solve that problems, but you need to find a solution. We'll talk about the process in terms of once you identify the problem which you want to solve, how to come up with ideas or products or services to solve those problems. So opportunity recognition can lead to both not only personal but also societal wealth, because you are solving other people's problem, or as well as your own problems. So it doesn't have to be other people's problem. They can be your own problems as well. If you solve other people's problem, it will generate societal wealth. But if you solve your problem, personal problems itself, might solve a problem for you, yeah, but in general, you're looking for more people to pay you. In general, if you're only solving your problem, maybe you only get one customer, and that is yourself. But you solve for other people's problem, not only you get societal wealth, but other people, and there are a lot of people on this planet. There are nearly 8 billion people on this planet. If you solve their problem, they will all pay you to solve their issues. So entrepreneurial, you need some creativity, some kind of imagination, and so on. But to help with or identify a solution for those problems which we talked about. So entrepreneur is all about finding the problem first, and then being imaginative or creative or innovative to come up with a solution to solve other people's problem, and hence get them to pay you to solve their problems, or yourself to solve those problems. So how do entrepreneurs do what they do? So to solve problems, you need some kind of creative thinking, plus some kind of systematic process or systematic analysis. In doing so, you will have some kind of product or service or solution, and hence success. You deliver these solutions to your customers. So seeking out a unique opportunity is important. You don't want to have competitors as well. If you find something and you find a unique opportunities, you will have less competitors to worry about. So seeking out unique opportunity to fill some kind of problems or solve some kind of problems which are basically someone's needs or someone's wants to solve themselves, and they will pay you to do so. So what you actually are doing is turning problems which you identify into opportunities. Yeah? So recognizing problems are to solution what demand is to supply. Yeah? So recognizing problems is only one side of it. You need to figure out some kind of unique solution to solve those problems. But once you achieve these things, there will be people who's willing to pay you to do these things. So let's go through some example. Let's change color to this. I think it's the wrong color. You can't see that. Okay, sources. Sources of problems and solution to problems. Or example of solution to problems. Sources, it can be an unexpected occurrence. Many examples of these unexpected occurrences, such as COVID or 9/11 terrorist attack, or Apple computer or microcomputers, or even smartphones when it comes to Apple and iPhones. Let's do that. Maybe iPhones nowadays is a lot more famous than computers when it comes to Apple. And let's change that to Apple. Yeah, everyone knows what Apple do. It is the largest company, one of the largest companies in the world. Unexpected tragedy. Maybe change this to COVID-19. There's a lot of businesses coming out to the things like vaccines and many different pharmaceutical coming out with drugs to cure the COVID-19, or these social distancing, and all these delivery services when it comes to quarantine and so on. And because of these unexpected occurrence or these problems created by unexpected created, there are opportunity, and not only that, there are solutions to these opportunities or problems, where potential business can arise. So potential rise from COVID-19 is vaccine or food delivery nowadays. Yeah, food delivery. I won't talk much about iPhones. I think everyone has a smartphone. And those in the class who do not have a smartphones, I would be very, very surprised at. Other occurrence, other problems which you create or potential source for startups and entrepreneur are so-called incongruity. So things like not only overnight delivery, but especially COVID now as well. Also food delivery due to the pandemic. Other problems were also created are things like process needs. Nowadays, maybe some of these are kind of old now. I'm not saying that they do not exist, but these can be not so popular or not so big in Vietnam. Process needs such as sugar-free products for those who look after their health, caffeine-free products or coffee, those who want to drink coffee but who suffer from coffee high or caffeine high or stress and so on, or even microwave ovens and so on, which requires slightly different process and in other words, other kind of problems which require solutions to solve these problems. People will pay you, and in general, and we have seen it throughout the world, people pay for these sugar-free products or caffeine-free. Maybe let's change a few things here so to make it a little bit more adaptable and factual, especially in Vietnam. So in Vietnam, a lot of people are lactose intolerant as well, so maybe lactose intolerance products, such as milk and yogurt and so on. In Asia, 90% of the population in Asia are lactose intolerant. Yeah, most European countries in general do not suffer from the issue of lactose. Maybe 20%, 10% who are lactose intolerant in Vietnam, but in Asia, sorry, in Europe, but in Asia, up to 90%. Let's write that down as well. 90% of Asian lactose intolerance. Which is quite a high number, lactose, compared to other parts of the world. Other problems are industry and market change. I mean, we have industry 4.0 these days. People want to move into automations and so on. In healthcare industry, changing home healthcare to relieve the needs, especially nowadays. It's very, very important because with COVID and so on, there are less hospital beds. So maybe by moving a lot of these other minor health issues and so on to home care and so on, it will reduce the amount or the needs for more hospital beds and reduce the. Let me just format this. Let's do a comma here. Move microwave oven up here. Okay. So healthcare industry and so on, by moving a lot of these treatments and so on to the home, especially with COVID and pandemics and so on, issues, there is a lack of resources as hospitals and so on. Nowadays, we even have a lot of these field hospitals, which needs to be created to have more beds and so on. So hence, if we can move a lot of these things, and that's what in Vietnam, a lot of these opportunity, a lot of these buildings that are being taken over and converted, a lot of these high-rise buildings converted into field hospitals. So it's a lot of it's moving healthcare and so on to outside or to other potential area other than hospital in general, to increase the capacity in Vietnam. Other things such as demographical changes. Vietnam is a very young country. Maybe it's not necessary to have rest home or retirement centers. Those are required for older countries such as Italy or even France and so on, or even Japan. Japan is very famous for a very old country. Something like 70% of the population is above the age of 60. So maybe this is not necessarily a problem in Vietnam. If anything, in Vietnam, we probably need more in terms of childcare rather than rest home in general, because of the young population, and not only that, potentially we will have the so-called echo of the baby boom. Once the baby boomer, and in Vietnam, they're reaching childbearing age, so they begin to have their own kids, their own children, and hence we will also get a boom in terms of babies in Vietnam as well, especially when now Vietnam's has increased the number of child. Previously, Vietnam has a 2-child policy. Now that has been relaxed. Even Vietnam realized that the country is getting older and older, so hence we need to be able to increase the number of kids and so on. So even the 2-child policies has been removed. Now we can have up to so-called 3 or 4-child policies now in Vietnam. Perpetual changes, exercise, and in terms of the modern day lifestyle, in terms of all these exercise and gyms and so on, which we see all around Ho Chi Minh City. Yeah, so being healthy is very important. Being active is very important. So hence a lot of these gyms popping up all around Vietnam. Not only that, in Vietnam also there is a growing concern for fitness as well. Especially nowadays, we realize that, especially with COVID, people who are fit or healthy tends to be more likely to survive COVID compared to people who are obese and unhealthy or have medical, long-term medical illness and so on, tends not to be able to survive COVID infection. So exercise and so on, gyms and so on, eating healthy and so on are very, very important. So hence it can create business opportunity. These are problems which need to be filled. So maybe more gyms are needed, and maybe more healthy food products are needed to help improve the fitness as well as health of individuals to be able to survive through COVID and other diseases. There's also knowledge-based concepts nowadays. Smartphones. He's quite old, so hence he's talking about cell phones and mobile phones. Nowadays, or the newer generation is all about to do with smartphones and maybe iPhones, more relevant. Smartphones, iPhones and various different tablets and tablets technology. Let's do tablets as well, plus tablets. Technology, as well as the pharmaceutical industries with vaccines. And with automation and so on, especially nowadays with COVID and lockdowns and so on, less people are going to factories. And not only that, there is a general phenomenon which are happening in Ho Chi Minh City, especially after lockdown. A lot of people want to return back to their home province. So hence, Ho Chi Minh City will have a shortage in terms of employees. If everyone seems to want to return back to home province, the factory is not going to be able to get enough employees and so on. Travel are restricted and so on. So hence, automation and robotic may be a solution to a lot of these problems which are currently occurring, especially after the lockdown being removed. Yeah, so everyone seems that I know seems to want to go back to their home province nowadays. So there are two approaches in terms of creating or creative problems or innovative problems solving. In the previous slide, we're looking at source of problems and example of how to solve these problems. But in general, most of you, when you identify the problem itself, you need to be able to figure out the solution itself. You know, as the previous slide already outlined what are the solutions already. So in general, there are two approaches when it comes to creative problem solving. There is the adapter problems by using existing technologies and so on to solve the problems, or come out with new technology to solve the problems which you identify. So there's nothing wrong with adapter or finding existing solutions to solve the new problems. Adapter is basically a lot easier, and we kind of seen that with COVID and so on, which we'll go through in a moment as well. And the adapter is basically employ a discipline precise methodological approach using what existing technology out there and adapting it to solve the problems. It's concerned with solving rather than finding a new solution or a unique solution to the problems itself. They, in general, tend to attempt to refine the current practices or the current existing technology or drugs or cure or practices. And in general, they tends to be more mean-oriented rather than the solution-orientated. And is capable of extending detailed works in sensing to group cohesion as well as cooperation. So adapters, for example, take the COVID problems, for example. So COVID is a disease which is a big problem around the world today, especially with pandemics and so on. So there are ways to solve the COVID problems, and what we can see with vaccines and various drugs available to hopefully to resolve this issue which we have with COVID. And a lot of the pharmaceutical are looking for towards existing medicine, such as the various different drugs available, or existing vaccine which can be used to cure COVID as well. If you find these existing vaccines or even cure and so on, it's a lot easier overall, and it's a lot faster to resolve a lot of these problems. And we have seen that. I mean, quite a few drugs come out to help cure COVID. Things like even aspirin, headache pill, for example, for COVID. Don't forget, originally aspirin was, when it first was discovered, it was used for fever. Aspirin was a drug which most of us are quite well known nowadays, was first found to solve or to cure or to reduce fever as such. But since then, it has been adapted to not only cure fever, it gets utilized for other purposes as well, to help in terms of being a painkiller, as well as a reduce inflammatory. And nowadays, it helps reduce blood clots and so on as well. So now it's being utilized to help with COVID, because a lot of people who die, a lot of people who got infected with COVID and so on, died because of blood clots and so on. A reaction to COVID in your blood and so on, it creates a lot of blood clots and so on. So before, aspirin was a common drug originally found just to help with fever as such, but then people adapted aspirin, since it's very common kind of drugs, to help with painkillers and anti-inflammatories, as well as nowadays blood thinner, and even in COVID cases and so on. People who, before they go to hospital, if they take aspirins and so on, they will increase their chance of survival and so on. There's plenty of other drugs which are also available and exist and so on, which are very similar to aspirins, and people are using it to adapt it to solve existing problems. Yeah, those are easy in general. The innovators have a bigger problems. In general, innovating or coming up with new drugs to solve COVID can take years to do. And in general, maybe it takes a couple more years for us to be able to see that. But the innovators have a bigger problem. In general, their approach is approaching things from unusual angle. Yeah, so some of the vaccines which we recently seen are using new technology and using an unusual angle to approach these new technology, such as the mRNA kind of drugs or vaccines and so on. They are from the innovators, not the adapters. They tend to discover problems and avenue to solutions as such. Yeah, for them, these things tend to be a lot harder to do. And in general, they tend to question basic assumptions and relate it to kind of practice, as well as have very little regard for the means and more interested in the solution at the end. In general, they have very little tolerance for routine work. Innovation or innovators or invention as such, these are big jumps. Yeah, they're the big finding, they're the Nobel Prize kind of steps. Yeah, whereas adapters tends to be taking what already existed and adapted to different use. And in general, they have very little or no need for consensus. Often they are insensitive to others. Yeah? It's a lot harder to invent things or to be innovative as such, because these things, or the solution to these things, tends to be much bigger steps, bigger jumps. Yeah? These are jumps, whereas adapters are like a Apple iPhone version 6 to version 10. So they are increment using existing technology and just improving it incrementally. Whereas innovators, they're like the first iPhone, for example, or the internet, or the invention of the new vaccine, for example, or new cure for cancers. They're a lot harder and they're a lot more fewer and far in between compared to the so-called adapters. Okay, let's take a 15 minutes break. Now it is 2:26, let's say 2:30. We will come back at 2:45, okay? Okay, let's restart. Can you hear me, anyone? Somebody respond?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, good. Okay, let's get back to the lecture. Okay, so before the break, we talked about creativities and so on, about adapters and innovators. Innovators are a lot harder to do. They're the big jumps in terms of innovation. They're the invention. They're a lot harder to do. Whereas adapter are incremental improvements. Yeah, so using existing technology or existing products for a different purpose or different application. So in terms of startups, or once you find solutions, you need to figure out how to find problems. You need to figure out how to find the solutions and so on. So the nature or the process of creativity takes time. Once you identify a problem, then you need to apply the creative process. Now, creativity is a process that can be developed by anyone and can be improved as well. So it's not a skill set where you are born or you have it or you don't have it. You can learn how to be more creative, and not only that, you can get better at being creative or being a problem solver or a creative person. So some individuals have very good or great aptitude in terms of creativities than others. But for those who do not have as much aptitude for creativity as others, they can also develop and improve their skill sets as well. So the creative process takes time. It goes through 4 different phases. Yeah, the first phase, first you identify whatever problems that other people need you to solve or willing to pay you to solve, whether it's a service or a product to solve the problems. First, you need to be able to read up background knowledge, improve on your background knowledge and information on the problem itself and how other people have solved those problems. So it's equivalent to like your literature review when you do your theses. Before you start anything, you need to know or have at least some background or some knowledge about how to solve the problem. So the first phase is to do a literature review or read up or watch YouTube video on what the problem is all about. Once you understand the problems, then you can attempt to solve it. But before you attempt to solve something, if you don't have background knowledge or done a literature review, then unlikely you're going to come up with a solution or even a optimal solution. You might come up with a solution to it, but it's not necessarily going to be optimal. So you need to do some literature review, do background knowledge, and so on. Once you accumulate all these information and knowledge and background on it, then you might be capable of solving the problem. So the next phase after the literature review or background knowledge accumulation is the incubation process. It takes time, to process all the information, all the literature review, all the background knowledge in the back of your head, including the problem. Yeah, so once you have all these information, you need to be able to incubate, play around with the information in your head. And that is what is the so-called incubation period. It takes time to process all the data which you've gathered. It takes time to link information with other information or problems with solution. So it takes time to incubate your ideas, to come up with new ideas and so on, or innovation or adapter and so on. And that's the phase, and then it's the phase 3. Yeah. Once your background knowledge, your literature review and so on, you incubate the information which you have, then you go through this so-called idea experience. You play around with real ideas which you have from all your research in phase 1 and phase 2. Once you have some idea, you evaluate your idea, and as well as implement the idea, and then test to see how it works in the marketplace. Is the customer satisfied with your solution? In general, your first time you do this, it's not necessarily a perfect solution. It takes time. It's an incremental kind of steps. You issue a solution to your customers, you get feedback from customers, you improve on it, and you kind of iterate and loop through the whole creative process. So if there's some issue, then you do more background reading or more literature review. You do more incubated. You have the idea experience, and then you evaluate, and then you implement your solution or your for your products or your services and so on. And then you do it until it gets better and better. Similar to your clean tech assignment, in the sense that the more time you go through this loop, the better your solution will be. So the most common idea killer, and there's plenty, if anything, it's a lot easy to come up with an idea killer compared to coming up with an idea. It is asymmetric, yeah? Easy on one side, hard on the other side. Coming up with ideas is hard. Come up with reason for saying it's a stupid idea, it's easy. Yeah? So things which are easy is saying, when someone comes to you with an idea, you say nah, or can't, or that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Yeah, these things are easy to say. It's safe to say. Yeah? Because it's safe to say, it is easy. But for someone to come up with an idea, for you to say all this in the first place, for them is a lot harder. You know, for them, they put in their neck out, and you're just taking advantage of them. So things like, yeah, but if you did that, yeah, or yeah, but we already tried that years ago, or I don't see anything wrong with the way we're doing it right now, or we never done anything like that before, or we have got deadlines to meet, we don't have time to consider that, or it's not in the budget, or where do you get these weird idea, or Mr. Voon at Vina Group have done it already, why are you looking into it? So these things are easy to say. Coming up with the ideas in the first place is a lot harder. And entrepreneur or startups and so on, they, in general, majority of the times, they spend a lot of time, a lot of effort in terms of coming up with all these ideas. And then for them, in general, the first kind of feedback from anyone is usually negative, yeah, because it's so easy to come up with negative compared to coming up with the ideas for the solution. So don't do that in your group, yeah, especially when you do your clean tech assignment, not a clean tech assignment, but your EBIS assignment as well. Please respect those who come up with ideas and don't shoot them down or punish them by these negative comments. Negative comments is so easy to do. For every ideas you can come up with, I can always come up with 10 or 20 negative comments to you, and it's relatively safe for me to do that. So please do respect people who come up with ideas. It's a lot harder for them to come up with ideas, and it's a lot easy for you, much, much easier for you to come up with ideas killers, yeah, or negative comments. So be careful. It's asymmetric. So once you have an idea, going through all these process of innovation, of creativities and incubations and so on, and not only that, experience all the negative comments from all your teammates or your classmates or anyone, yeah, because for them it's very easy to come up with negative ideas because for them it's safe. Once you've done all that, then you need to be able to develop your creativity as well, such as recognizing relationship, looking for difference or unorthodox relation among the elements of your problems or your solutions, as well as the people around you. In addition, develop a functional perspective by viewing things and people in terms of how they can satisfy his or her needs and help complete the project itself. But it's also about using your brain. Different people, like the hacker, hustlers, and hipsters, are different for a reason. The hipsters are creative, whereas the hacker are more technical. These are different personnel or personality. Right brain people in general tend to be more creative. They're like the so-called hipsters. They're the creative, they're the designer, they're the chief marketing officer, they're the chief sales people, and so on, in general. Whereas the left brain are more analytical or logical. They are more of a scientist, less of an artist, more of a scientist. They're the hustler, not hustler, sorry, hacker. The scientist or the engineer in general. So it depends on, not everyone are the same. Different people use different part of their brain. They tend to be dominant on their right brain. In general, they tend to be more to do with creative or more pictorial, whereas those who use more of their left brain tends to be more logical, rational, and so on overall. So you need to figure out, identify which kind of person you are and contribute to the team through what it is you are good at, whether you're logic or you are creative. You can have these creative exercise. Those who are left brain probably need more in terms of creative exercise. Those who have or who use their right brain more tend to be good at creativity already because they're more visual overall. And hence, there are also a group of people who use both part of their brain, both left and right part of the brain. So hence they can be good at not only logics and scientific thinkings and so on, but they are also good at creativity as well. So you can go through these simple exercise, think of and write down all the functions you can imagine for the following items. Yeah, and from this, you can identify whether you are left brain or right brain, whether you are the hipsters of the group or the hacker of the group. So things like an egotistic staff members write something down, a large pebble or fallen tree branch, a chair. By doing so, if you come up with an answer quite quickly and so on, or creative, then you know that you are right brain or right hemisphere dominant. Those which come up with scientific or logical kind of examples or items relating to these terms, then you are more of a scientist or engineer, and hence you are more left brain kind of person, or left brain dominated. But those who come up with something in between creativity and scientific engineering, then you are using both sides of your brain, both left and right side of your brain. Another way, it's not a very scientific way, is to figure out if you are left brain or right brain, is maybe use this picture as such. So you see, everyone in the class can see there is a ballerina here, and a ballerina is spinning round in circle. If it's spinning clockwise, it means it's going round the same way as a clock. Yeah, it's around in this direction. If it's spinning anti-clockwise, it means that it's spinning opposite way to the way which the clock spins. Yeah. So I want to see a show of hands. Okay. Here's some class participation. Let me just bring up the picture again. So most of you had an opportunity to watch this during the break. So let's see what your answers are. So, hang on. Oh, here you go. Give it a short while, it'll come up. Okay, I want a show of hands, yeah? Those, I would say clockwise or anti-clockwise or both direction, yeah? I want you to raise your hand by pressing raise your hand button here. Yeah, so pressing this button here, raise your hand. Let me just start this again. Okay, stick up your hands, those which see the ballerina spinning in the clockwise direction. So round and round in circle in a clockwise direction. How many people? I can see 2 people, 3. Any more? Only 3? There are 28 people in the class. 5 hand raised. So 6 people, well, it's increasing, 9 people spinning clockwise. Okay, I just want to need those who can see it clockwise. 10, 11, 12 people. 12 people clockwise. Okay. Hands up those who can see it spinning anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise. Now, opposite direction to the clock. So in the opposite direction. 1 hand raised. 1 person. Is that all? Only 1? That's quite surprising. Let me just play again. So clockwise, anti-clockwise direction, only 1 vote for anti-clockwise. Okay, put up, yeah, raise your hand if you can see the ballerina spinning in both directions, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. So basically the ballerina are flipping left and right, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, rather than spinning clockwise or anti-clockwise. So you see 5 hands raised, 5 hands raised to both directions. Yeah, so you can see that all of you are looking at the same picture. Yeah? This ballerina is the same picture for all of you. But some of you are seeing it spin in one direction, other are spinning in the other direction. And then there are other people who see it actually spin in both directions. So it's not accurate. Yeah. It's been proven otherwise, it's not accurate. But in general, if you see it clockwise, you are kind of right brain. If you see it spinning anti-clockwise, you kind of seen it, you are more left brain dominant, you're more scientific and so on. If you see in clockwise, you're more verbal and more visual than logics and analytics and so on. So here, the left and right brain. Let me just make sure this left and right brain. I think. Okay. So people who are left brain dominant tend to be more verbal, analytical, abstract, rational, or logical, or linear. They're the so-called hacker of the group. And those which are right brain, or right hemisphere dominant, tend to be more creative. Are non-verbal, more visual. They're more synthesized in their scene analogies more so, and less in terms of being very scientific or engineering. They're more non-rational as well. They can be very spontaneous. They are spatial, they are intuitive, and they are imaginative or creative. You know, those which are more right brain dominant. And those which can see the picture flipping back and forth are both left brain and right brain dominant. Yeah, so it's not a foolproof test, but it's just to show you that even though all of you are looking at the same picture, not all of you are the same. Some see it one way, some see the other way. Even though you look at the same picture, not all of you agree. Yeah, so you should agree to disagree. So ways to improve. If you know that you are right brain, or if you know that you are left brain, and you want to be more, if you're right brain and you want to be more logical or more scientific, and if you are left brain and you want to be more creative or more imaginative, then these are the steps you need to do. So those who want to improve on their left brain or their scientific or their logical side of things, you need to do step-by-step planning of your work and your activities. Everything needs to be planned. Those are the left brain people. Hence, they are good hackers and so on. You like to read ancient and medieval scholastic philosophy, or in legal case, and books and science textbooks and so on. Yeah, that will definitely help improve your logical thinking and so on, or improve on your left brain or left hemisphere dominant. You want to establish a timetable for all your activities. Everything left brain do, it's all well planned. Yeah, there's no spontaneous or spontaneity and anything like that. When you are left brain, you know, everything is planned out and logical, and there's reason why you do it. So using and working with computer programs and so on, you have to be logical. Otherwise, your computer program will not, well, it's not going to work. And as well as you try to be more detailed, fantasizing, as well as visualizing things, as well as situation into the future. So it's about planning and future and so on. Everything needs to be drawn out. You need to be able to draw faces, caricatures, as well as landscape. These things are factual. So in general, they are more strong among the left brain or left hemisphere kind of person. If you want to be, if you're left brain, you want to be more right brain, then you need to do more of this. So you need to use metaphor as well as analogy to describe things, as well as people in your conversation and writing, because these are non-scientific, and they're more imaginative and creative and so on. And in general, people who are right brain or right hemisphere dominated tend to find these exercises are very easy to them. Scientific and engineers find these things easy to them and find this hard, and vice versa. People who are right brain find this easy and this hard. Yeah. So that's why if you want to improve on your right brain, you need to do more of this. You need to be able to take off your watch and when you are not working, and so you can be more spontaneous. The right brain hemisphere in general are more to do this. They're not into planning. They don't do planning very well. They find it very difficult. They find it a lot easier to operate without their watches, or to do things in terms of metaphor as well as analogy, rather than factual and planning and so on. Also, right brain hemisphere in general tends to suspend. You need to be able to suspend your initial judgment of ideas, or new acquaintance, or movies, or TV, and so on. You need to do it all on feelings. Yeah. In general, right brain are more to do with feelings, or their gut instinct, as they say. You need to be able to record your hunches, or your feelings, or your intuition, and calculating their accuracy and so on. Yeah, more so than the left brain. Left brain tends to do it as factual. Right brain tends to do things on hunches or feelings or intuitions and so on. They find it a lot more easier in that way. So hence they're more creative overall, whereas these over here tends to be more logical and scientific, or more engineering kind of people. They're more like good at adaptive, and right hemisphere might be very good at very innovative or even invention kind of things. They do big steps, big jumps. So innovation and the entrepreneurs. Innovations in general is a process which we kind of gone through. They're very similar to inventive, but they're in general innovation are big jumps. Is the process by which the entrepreneurs convert opportunity into marketable ideas, or convert problems, which we talked about. It's a lot easier to find problems and then use the innovation or the innovative process or the creative process to convert problems into ideas, and then people will pay you for that. So that's what innovation is all about, is that process of converting problems into ideas. It's a combination of vision to create a good idea, background reading or literature review and so on, and as well as idea incubation and so on, and the perseverance and dedication to remain until you come out with a solution or a implementation for the customers. And then also you need to be able to get feedback and improve as well. So this is only half of the process. Yes, you can come out with an idea, a solution and so on. It's not going to be perfect like your first run of clean tech assignment. You need to be able to go through this process a few times, and each time you will improve. It's the same with your product and your service. So it's an iterative process. It's a key function in the entrepreneurial process, and it is a special function among the successful entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship in general. Because with innovation or unique solution into the marketplace, not only you help solve societal problems by solving their problems, you help with the economy, but not only that, by coming out with something unique only to you and so on, you're not going to be able to, not going to compete with other people as well. So if you come out with innovative products or services and so on, there's going to be less competition, especially if it's a unique innovation and so on. And hence you add more to the society, you add more knowledge to society as well. So the innovation process can be of 3 or 4 different kinds. The hardest is the invention. They are the big jumps. They're the so-called Nobel Prize winning kind of innovation. And then in addition to invention, there the extension, just an incremental improvement, or duplication with maybe with a better business process or better process, or synthesizing just by replicating but using different raw materials, for example. A source of innovation, we kind of talked about these already in the previous table up here. In this table here, if I believe. Unexpected occurrence, incongruity, process needs, and so on. Yeah, all those apply down here as well. With innovation or source of innovation will come about through unexpected occurrence like COVID-19 and so on, or incongruity, or a different process need. Nowadays, we need more to do with Industry 4.0s and more technology and so on, as well as industry and environmental or market changes. Yeah, so as the world develop into a new world, especially with as around the world we're moving out of lockdowns and we're beginning to live with COVID-19 and so on, the market will change, industry will change. We need to be able to adapt or come up with solution to adapt to the new environment. Or it could be demographic change as Vietnam getting older and older, or even as currently, especially with COVID and so on, or we have the so-called the echo of the boom, the population boom in the 1970s. We're approaching most of the Vietnam. Most of the people were born, especially the boom years, just after the Vietnam War, 1975 or so. So now most of these people are of the childbearing age, so they're becoming parents now. So we will have the echo of the 1970 population boom at the moment. Separate to that, there's the perceptual change. As environments and different people's perception changes, they need to adapt to new marketplace. Hence, you need innovation to do that as well as knowledge-based concepts, as new inventions such as quantum computers and graphene and so on become more and more commonplace. Some innovation in action. Let me just format this a little bit. So these are the type of invention. We kind of talked about the 4 different kind of invention in the previous slide. The invention, extension, duplication, and synthesis and so on. With invention the hardest, and in general, they're the big jumps or Nobel Prize winning kind of invention. So they're totally new product or service which comes about, or new process as well. So things like invention of the aeroplane, or the light bulb, or the telephone. If we kind of put into today's technology concepts, like the invention of the internet, or the smartphones, or e-commerce and mobile commerce and so on. They're the big jumps, they're the big steps. Whereas the things like extension, relatively quite simple. It's just an improvement on existing technology. So new use or different application of an already existing product or service or process. Examples such as McDonald's or Facebook or hotels and so on, they're just an extension of existing product as well. And social networking existed way before Facebook, as well as restaurant exists before the McDonald's and the Lotteria and so on. You know, they're basically just extension on what restaurant is, and Facebook is just an extension on what social network working was. They weren't the one or the people who pioneered or even started these new technology in the first place. It's same with hotels and resorts and so on. Whereas duplication are basically creative replication of an existing technology or an existing concept. So example would be just like Walmart's, and which is basically a duplication of department stores. Yeah, department store technology, department store exists a long time ago. Or Dell or Gateway are basically extension of, duplication of personal computers, as well as Pizza Hut, which is duplication of Pizza Parlor, which already in existence. There's a slight difference between these two, but the difference are relatively quite small. Extension is more of an improvement on the duplication, whereas duplication is just exactly less extension on top of that. So extension is just duplication with an extension, whereas duplication is just duplication on its own. Synthesis is basically these kind of innovation are a combination of existing technology or existing concepts and factor in new formulation or use as well. So it's a step further than extension. So it's not just duplication, but then you need to factor in new formulation as well. So things like FedEx have converted the postal services into something else, which is a separate service on its own nowadays. Same thing with Starbucks as well. Yeah, they coffee or tea house being in existence, but Starbucks kind of took it, add the Italian flair to it, and pretty much everyone else tried to replicate or copy Starbucks after that. I mean, that's why you notice that in Starbucks or nowadays in modern coffee houses and so on, they take a lot of concept from Italian, yeah. But that's what Starbucks did. Starbucks kind of took the concept of a coffee house and then add in the Italian flair. Yeah? That's why you hear names such as espresso or cappuccino, or even the machines and so on, and the coffee makers. They all have kind of Italian kind of terminologies and so on. But that's what Starbucks did, and that's why Starbucks became so successful in the way in which they are. They kind of took the flair from the Italian way in the way in which they treat coffee, and mix it in with the concept of a tea house or coffee house and so on. And then pretty much after that, everyone else try to replicate what they did anyhow. So that's synthesizing, adding a lot more with new formulation. With Starbucks, they add in the Italian flair. So major myths among innovation. Myth number one, innovation is planned and predictable. Not the case. Yeah? Innovation, especially with invention or in general, are big jumps. They come out of nowhere. They are not predictable. They are not planned. That's pretty much what the invention is all about. They're totally new products, not planned at all. Yeah, so Innovation, if it's invention, definitely it's not planned and it's not predictable. Technical specification should be thoroughly prepared. Yes, especially with technologies and so on. But with innovation, it can be multiple things. It doesn't have to be science. It doesn't have to be engineering. It can be innovation in music or innovation in cooking, for example. It could be a good recipe of some sort. So a lot of it, innovation can be applied to many different areas. It doesn't have to be technical per se. It can be artistic. It can be in other industry, but rather than only technical. So some of these industry and so on, technical specification is not needed, especially with jazz or music and so on. These things come through creativity, the process of creativity itself. There's no technical way of doing these things. Myth number 3, creativity relies on dreams and blue sky ideas. Not all creativities are, or not all innovation are. Some of them are pretty much duplication or extension or synthesizing itself as well. It doesn't, not everything to do innovation and creativity needs to be unique and new, or even to be inventive, anything like that. It can be just an iterative improvement, or a duplication, or a synthesis, or an extension of existing ideas or technology. Myth number 4, big projects will develop better innovation than small one. That's untrue, definitely untrue. Majority of the most successful innovative from the pharmaceutical, most biotech are more successful than pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies are the big companies and so on. Similarly, startups in general tend to be more innovative than the big companies like Vin Group or the big conglomerates or Samsung and so on. In general, it is the startups and so on which come out with a new or better innovation, and then the big companies like the Samsung or the Vin Group are buying or purchasing these startups to merge it into their own. So in general, through red tapes and so on, as well as bureaucracy, big projects or big companies, innovation in general tends to be not as fast or as good as the so-called startups or the small companies in general. You know, it's usually the other way around. It's not about investments and so on with big companies. They also bring bureaucracy and red tape with them. Startups in general have less innovation, but part of innovation is about inventing things which use less money overall anyway. So it's being less resource space and so on, make them more inventive. Just come up with things which are less resource needed. Technology is the major driving force of innovation and success. That's not all true, although technology is one of the major driving success of innovation, especially with economy and society and so on. But there are other innovations as well. We talked about a good recipe for restaurants or food, or a good song from a singer-songwriter. Yeah, they are not technology-based. Or a good film. Yeah, I mean, recently, the success of Squid Games and so on have been kind of a worldwide success. So it's a kind of new innovation per se, but it's not necessarily anything to do with technology. It's good because it's good, and it's innovative because it is innovative. Okay, let's check the time. It's 3:30. I think we ran out of time. Rather than jump into new topics, which is ethics and social entrepreneurship, I think we will finish there for today. We'll continue with ethics and social entrepreneurships next week. I think we're moving pretty quick. I think we can cover most of the topics before the midterm exams and so on. So maybe we'll mix in some other things to make things interesting next week. I'll try to mix in other things to shift away from, you know, the usual lecture and which you have to do with other classes and so on. I'll try to do it today with the you know, the class participation and the spinning ballerina and so on. I'll try to do more of that next week because we're ahead of time anyway for the midterms. We cover quite a lot of materials already, and we can easily cover ethics and social entrepreneurships within the next 2 weeks as well. So we have time to add in other things, other more interesting things, to move away from theory and so on, and makes things a little bit more fun than what we are doing at the moment. Okay, any question from anyone?
Yes, teacher, sorry, the midterm exam is next week, right?
No, I don't think so. It's 2 more weeks. I think 3 more weeks away.
Okay, and then it will be online.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be online. I mean, this week here, which is week number 7, according to the university, then we have week 8, which is also another class. Yeah. Let me see, check. Then we have week 9, this is also another class. And then week 10 would be the midterm exams. So hence there's no class on week 10. Yeah. And week 11, there's no class on week 11 as well. So those 2 weeks are the midterm exams. And then lecture begin again on week 12. Then we have class again. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. So next week will be the presentations.
Might be not. We'll do it. If you want to, we can do it. The things I'm worried that maybe you have your presentation already prepared, but most of the other, most of your classmates might not have. So we'll let it after the midterm exams. Yeah, I don't want the midterm exams to interfere with the presentation. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Thanks.
Any other question from anyone else? No question?
No, sir.
Okay, if there are no question, then we will finish today and we'll continue next week. And I'll try to mix in more things next week. Because like I said, midterm exams is 2 weeks away. And I think it'll take 1 week, one more day to finish the ethics and the social entrepreneurships. Okay, so bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye, sir.